it's Drybear. We're hitting that stable point in Path of Exile 2 where we're talking a lot about long-term for the early access release, what's missing in the game, what can be done. And today I want to tackle a very important topic that gets brought up every single day, and is actually a big wrench for a lot of people that are wanting to enjoy the game more. And that is the current state of trade and item exchanges in Path of Exile 2. And we're actually seeing a very positive thing with Path of Exile 2, where players that don't normally play ARPGs, don't normally play Path of Exile 1 or even Diablo, Last Epoch, any of those others, coming in and trying Path of Exile 2 and having a great time, but they're noticing the setup for the current state of trade that might not be what they're expecting, as it is a bit archaic in how they approach it. Let's quickly get everyone caught up in case they're not this far or haven't done this before, just to make sure we're being inclusive with this. But the way trading works in Path of Exile 2 is you will be able to create trading tabs that have a price. You can set an item for a price. When you put it in this tab, it will then go up automatically on the trade website, and then players will be able to see your name and be able to send you a direct message to initiate a trade, which is an automated process. It happens automatically and it updates very quickly. So once you put it in that tab and set it as public, get a price on it, it functionally works as a bazaar, which is a system that we had in very old school like MMOs, like EverQuest going to the hubs, or like, you know, very basic bazaar systems where it'll go up and people will come find you, or like Final Fantasy 11, where you could turn your character into an NPC shop and you would go AFK and people could come to your physical character and buy something from you directly. It's kind of like the old school bazaar format. So it automatically goes up there. And then when you go on here, which has its downsides, not only for PC, but primarily for console as well. If you're not using a mouse and keyboard, or you don't have the web, it gets awkward to try and trade. So once this is up here, you can see how long ago they listed the item, what the price of it actually is, well, you know, if they're online right now, and then you can just go and you can hit this button, and if you're logged into the website, it will send a whisper to that person in game, initiating a trade. And once they receive that message in game, they'll invite you to a party. You'll meet up somewhere in game in one of your hideouts or in town. Then you'll grab the item, they'll grab the price, and then you can exchange through the trade. But this has a myriad of problems and challenges that is worth just reviewing really quick before we talk about the solutions and what GGG has officially said on the matter. The first issue is just an issue of practicality, because realistically many of these players are AFK or are not in a state where they want to trade. And so the experience happens very much all the time where if you leave your game up and walk away, someone sends you a trade request, you aren't there to respond. And many people are getting this experience now in PoE 2 where they're trying to find a weapon and they whisper, 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 whisper. They do it 100 times and everyone's AFK or doesn't want to trade right now. And they're just spending an hour of their time trying to find a seller that will get them an item they're looking for that's actually online. And I think that experience is just very detracting overall from the process of getting gear that you want. The second problem is with scammers. And this is going to be a problem no matter what setup you have for trade, auction house, whatever. If there's not some kind of regulation, there's always going to be scammers. This is something that happens a lot. And if you are someone who uses the trade system, I will just warn you, if you're new to Path of Exile trade or direct player-to-player trading, you have to be very careful when you're trading with other players. A very common one is people will take currency items and then they will like put it in the trade. And there's a cancel scam that is very common in Path of Exile where you will start a trade with all the correct currency in, and then you'll cancel it because they'll assume that you just accidentally hit cancel or you hit the wrong button, whatever. Then they'll start the trade again, but this time around they'll put in like, you know, not the same items in the same distribution. So first time they'll put 5 exalted orbs like this. Second time they'll put 1 exalted orb and then a bunch of these, right? And to scam you, or they'll use like divine orb on top with 5 divine orbs, and then they'll put in the second time 1 divine orb and 4 exalted, and they'll think that you'll just assume it's the same trade, it's laid out the same way, whatever, they canceled on accident, you accept it, that sort of thing. And also people like swapping out in and out items to try and get you to dupe and accept a trade. So all of that just gets kind of funky, and that's just human to human interactions when you have direct trading of this manner. And the last challenge, which is a great segue into the next part of this topic, is just the understanding of value. I think because the trade system is so indirect and also like item by item, it's hard to know if you're a new player or even just a player who plays casually the exact value of an item. And it can range drastically. You can have an item that's worth a lot and not realize. You can have an item that's not worth that much and price it. And knowing how to price things gets very awkward and in some cases kind of arbitrary, depending on where things are and what you're looking for out of it, because you can only see item by item. There's no like overall view of searching for specific ones. You don't see a history of how things are traded or shown, and everything's just kind of like it's like a Walmart Black Friday sale where everyone's just kind of running around and grabbing stuff. However, the price disparity and difficulty in trade is all intended. What GGG has stated in many interviews and recently is that they like the fact that trade needs to be inaccessible in some way. They want there to be friction in the system because they don't want different situations happening where people just, get to a certain level, buy all of the gear they need, and then get to the difficult content. So they intentionally set up a system that did not have a buyout or buy on demand option, and instead was very obtuse so that people would be discouraged from getting everything they need exactly when they need it. But I think right now people are just kind of fed up with that sort of style. It's just too old, it's too out of date, it's too archaic for people to want to be able to play in the leagues. And it's also like, that's what SSF is for as well. If you want people to accomplish it on their own versus not, I think if people want to play casually, they should have some kind of option. But you don't have to take it from me, you can take it from Jonathan Rogers, the director, to see exactly where their head is at right now. This is from just 10 months ago, leading up to the release of early access.
I guess my concern with that is I worry a little bit about adding that as an in-game element, because the message would be that, I think you'd get a lot of characters who just didn't complete the game without ever actually really beating everything.
Yeah.
So I'd be a bit hesitant to add something like that as a feature. I'd just be a little bit hesitant about adding something like that.
We're implicitly saying that you need to be killing all those bosses, and having it as a feature is sort of saying you can trade for it. We're not preventing you from doing so. But
people will obviously do that, but I guess the thing then is that if there's no secure way to do it, it obviously incentivizes all of the stuff around reputation systems and blah 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 blah. There's a whole rant about that's complicated, because it would be very easy then to be I'm effectively telling people we want you to be just playing the game without really playing it, which is a slight concern. But at the same time, we do have to be realistic that people are going to trade for that stuff anyway, so we do have to think about it. But yeah, I get it and understand.
Which I think is something that's important to be concerned about, and something you want to keep on the radar. By the way, this is from an interview that Zizaran, another content creator, had done for the game, so I can leave a link down to the full interview if you wanted to watch that on his channel, but I'm not going to try and use this content, just going to look at the response from the developers on this specifically. So I think with the fiasco we had with Diablo 3's launch with a real money auction house, this became a huge problem. So I think it is, it behooves any ARPG creator to be very cautious about trade and the accessibility of it. If you didn't play the launch of Diablo 3, what happened was there was not only a real money auction house, which means you could spend real money to buy things on the auction house, which was one problem in and of itself that was separate just for the monetization of the game, but also it was a rather unrestricted auction house as well. And so the common way to play Diablo 3 in the opening month while the real money auction house was persisting is you would basically farm Act 1 until you got enough currency, or you would just buy gear that dropped in Act 4, the end of the game. So you would just play the beginning of the game, buy gear from the end that people had put on the auction house, and then you would just steamroll Act 1, 2, 3, 4, final boss, and then you would be done. And that's kind of what they're trying to prevent here, but I think that there is an acknowledgement that the current system just isn't good enough. While it does help restrict people, it doesn't restrict them in a fun way, and is preventing a lot of people from enjoying the game more, just because I don't know, there just isn't enough reward for it, and it makes people just want to go SSF because ultimately the trading just doesn't feel like it serves the purpose that it's supposed to. And it's not like this system hasn't been solved or tackled in many other ways with various other games. Black Desert Online has a treatment for their system where you have durability that needs to be restored by duplicates of the same item, and they also have a rather controlled range listed auction house, which means that the price can't be too high or too low based on what the item is, and everything's kind of controlled that way. Lost Ark has an attrition system with their Theons, and the Theons are basically a separate currency. That means that anytime you buy something valuable that makes your characters stronger, you have to spend this limited resource that you have to farm up outside of the auction house so that you can spend it on important gear. So if you're buying accessories for your character that make your character directly stronger, you need this special coveted resource to do it, which means you have to go farm it or buy this resource in order to be able to consume that. And tons of other MMOs, ARPGs, and other even things like Last Epoch have introduced great new solidified systems that work excellently in being able to solve this problem while also making sure trade is an equal and enjoyable part of the process, which Jonathan has actually acknowledged.
Yeah, so previously we had said that we're not really wanting to change how trade is. But I think, okay, so then the situation now is different because, like people are seeing things like Last Epoch and so on and what they're doing with trade, and the people are like really liking what they're doing. And so then I don't know that we live in a world anymore where the current system that we have is good enough. And so that means that we have to change. And I don't want to necessarily go into every detail about that, but I guess what I will say is that like the previous feeling that we had was okay. Well, so let's talk about the axioms of like of like what we assume, right? So, we are a game that does not have bind on anything, right? We are not a game that has binding in it, right? That's a very important thing for us. Okay. So any system that involved binding, we don't want to do that.
Oh.
Number two, if you have a trade system that's ultra easy, that has no friction at all, like if you imagine just like instant buyout with like just like with no restriction, like everything's just completely free trade, what you'll get is an exponential curve where effectively the stuff that is the most powerful will become very, 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 very expensive, and the stuff that's anything even below that will become extremely, extremely cheap. So you get this kind of exponential curve, and effectively, if you imagine a game with no trade, you've got like a flat, effectively like power and difficulty acquire. Sorry, price and difficulty acquire are completely flat.
Yep.
Not that, and again, with no trade, that would even make sense. But effectively, it turns into a flat line, and then you get more and more exponential as you as you increase the easiness of trade. So therefore, the assumption is that there has to be some way of, in order for a game to be able to have trade, there needs to be something that restricts its use in some manner. And the previous way we looked at that was that you can either have instant buyouts or you can have instant like good search. And what we've been saying is, okay, well, I don't think players are going to accept anything less than instant buyouts, because I don't think there is a way to solve to solve the kinds of problems that people have with trade and PoE without having instant buyouts. So therefore, we now have to take as an axiom there must be instant buyouts, right? We must have that. There must be in some manner a way. How can we have that without having this problem? Now, previously we would have said, okay, well, in that case you can't have good search, but people will not accept a solution that doesn't involve the ability to search for items correctly. Therefore, we must have a proper search function.
Okay.
So what are we to do now then, right? Like if we must have instant buyouts and search, there has to be some manner of way to limit trade in some other means.
Yeah.
Now, if we're not going to have binding, that means there has to be some form of resource that limits trade in some manner that you have to play the game to get. And if that's the case, well, what resources do we have? Well, in PoE 2, we have gold. And if gold is something... So therefore, we discussed basically gold can be a limiting factor. And if we make it so that you can't trade gold, you can only play for gold. And if we add a gold fee as a part of an instant buyout cost... that can mean that we can potentially have a trade system that has instant buyouts and searching while still having a way to and no binding and all that sort of stuff. So it is possible to do that. So we're discussing it, right? We're looking into this. I think that it solves a really important problem. I believe it is possible. We have to, as I said, there's a lot of details to work out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues and concerns. But as I said, I think that people will no longer accept an action RPG that doesn't have instant buyouts as a trade for a trade system. So therefore, we will need to change. And as I said, yeah, that's we have to move with the times, right? Like we can't, and as I said before, I don't want to have any excuses if players are not enjoying something. We need to find a way to solve that problem. So yeah, well, we will solve that problem. We will find a way. That's my thinking on it anyway.
So you can see that they're definitely thinking about a good solution, and because Path of Exile 2 has gold in it as a soft currency that you can pick up and farm, it prevents you from having, being able to get to Act 1 and buy it. Now, it doesn't mean that people can't farm a bunch of gold and then be able to buy things, but they can also set the gold fee on the items on the auction house or on the trading system to be relevant to how strong the item is, and because the further into the game you get, the more gold you earn. Like getting 100,000 gold in Act 1 normal is basically impossible, but getting 100,000 gold when you're on the Atlas endgame is not as bad. Then you can price the fee related to the strength of the item and balance it out that way. It also opens up for more, gold traders or, item sellers or things like that, and RMTs and things like that. So it opens up a whole can of worms of problems. But I think that a lot of people would agree that the current system just isn't really tenable for the size of the game as it is right now. The biggest problem is really just being able to use it at all. You end up messaging like 5, 10, 15, 50, 100 people, and none of them respond. You have the currency, you want to trade, you're willing to accept variants in the item you're trying to buy, but you can't get people to respond so that you can actually trade to get that done. And even then, there's just not as many safeguards around being able to protect you in case of scammers. So it sounds like that instant buyout or buyout on purchase is in the works and is being talked about right now. It probably is a feature that is going to be lined up more for the release of the game in 2025 rather than like in the next month or two or whatever. But let me know what you think about buyout trade, the current trade system, and how it works. I've seen a lot of feedback over the course of early access the first month of people saying that they love the game, they just hate the trading, they don't like how it works, it's too old, it pisses them off, that sort of thing. So let me know where your head is at on the trading system and a possible auction house with buyout, and what kind of solution works to solve the problems that the director himself has also identified. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.